You can be innocent, but if you're desperate to prove it, you look guilty. That's the cruel paradox nobody warned you about. You can have a clean conscience. You can know deep down that you didn't mess up, that your intention was right, that you did the best you could with what you had. But the moment you start running after people, begging them to see your side, pleading, over-explaining, piling detail over detail, something changes. Your posture changes. Your tone changes. The energy in the room shifts. You stop looking solid and start looking desperate. You stop looking like someone who knows where they stand and start looking like someone trying not to drown. You can be innocent, and still, in the eyes of others, you begin to look guilty the moment you look terrified of being misjudged. Let's be brutal. When someone attacks you, 3 things happen in the mind of whoever is watching. They are not tracking every nuance of your story, and they are not weighing every detail like a judge in a perfect court. They are scanning for signals. They judge who looks calmer. Calm in public often feels like truth. It feels like certainty, like someone who doesn't feel threatened by the accusation. The calm person looks like someone who is silently saying, I know what I did. I know who I am. I don't need to flail to prove it. They notice who controls the pace of the conversation, who is speeding up, who is interrupting, who is drowning in words. The one who talks too fast, rushes to fill every silence, tries to fix everything in one desperate speech, looks out of control. The one who slows down, who takes a breath, who lets a few seconds of silence exist before speaking, looks like they own the tempo. And whoever owns the tempo often feels like they own the frame. They sense who is reacting and who is commanding. Reacting is always the weaker position. Reacting means you're letting the other person set the rules, set the tone, set the field. The person who reacts is pulled around like a puppet by accusations, by tone shifts, by emotional spikes. The person who commands doesn't chase after each provocation. They don't answer every jab. They don't feel compelled to correct every misinterpretation. The defensive one always reacts. The Machiavellian one observes. The defensive personality hears an accusation and immediately jumps up as if called to the witness stand. I can explain. They throw themselves into speeches, explanations, clarifications, trying to rescue their name from the fire. The Machiavellian personality does something different. They watch, they count, they let the other person expose themselves. They notice who is loud, who is emotional, who exaggerates, who needs an audience. They understand that in any public conflict, it's not just about what is being said, it's about who is losing composure first. They understand that composure is a form of evidence. And here comes the twist. Clarity is for therapy. Control is for power. In therapy, you are allowed to unravel. You are invited to explain everything, to go back to childhood, to name fears, to expose contradictions. In therapy, you open your heart, explain everything, chase clarity. Let me tell you exactly what happened. Let me tell you how I felt. Let me show you my side. It makes sense there. It's necessary there. It heals there. But outside that room, in power, the game is different. In power, you're not trying to be understood. You're trying to maintain your position. You're not talking to a therapist. You're talking to people with their own egos, their own agendas, their own blind spots. You're dealing with people who want to be right. People who want to use you as an example. People who want to feel morally superior. In power, you understand a cold reality. If you behave like a defendant, people will treat you like one. If every time you're questioned, you drop everything to prove yourself, to justify yourself, to show all the receipts, you'll train everyone to see you as someone who can be dragged into court at any moment. You are never obligated to explain your life to someone who attacks you in bad faith. Read that again. If someone comes to you without curiosity, without genuine questions, without good faith, you owe them nothing. If they come with accusations already formed, with a tone that says you're guilty until proven innocent, they don't want truth, they want drama. You are never obligated to give a TED talk about your intentions to someone who just wants to watch you bleed socially. There are people who don't want explanation. They want spectacle. They want you flustered, cornered, shaky. They want to see you trip over your own words. They want more material to gossip about later. And the more you talk, the more material you give them. The Machiavellian question is not, how do I get them to understand my side? That is the question of someone who still believes that other people's fairness will save them. The real question is, how do I keep control of perception without kneeling to the court of other people's opinions? How do you protect your position without turning yourself into a begging, apologizing, over-explaining mess each time someone disapproves of you? How do you maintain dignity even when you're being misread, doubted, or attacked? How do you refuse to let someone else frame your reality, while also refusing to sink to their level? Now imagine a meeting. Think of the room. The fluorescent lights, the laptops open, the slightly fake smiles, the little undercurrent of competition that nobody admits but everybody feels. You're there, you know your work, you know how much time you put into that report. And then your co-worker turns to you and says, in front of everyone, "This report came in way below expectations, didn't it? You didn't really prepare, did you?" Note the wording. Not, "Can we talk about this report?" Not, "Can you walk us through your process?" No, it's framed as failure. It's framed as laziness. And it's framed in public. They're not just questioning the work, they're questioning you. The weak, non-Machiavellian version reacts like this. "No, actually, I did the report right on time, but you didn't send me the data. And also, the system went down, and I tried to warn you, and on and on and on." You start bringing up details nobody asked for. You start explaining context nobody in that room cares about. It's a festival of excuses. And while you talk and talk, your status drops. The more you try to prove that you are not incompetent, the more you look like someone afraid of being seen as incompetent. The more frantic your explanation, the easier it is for people to think, if they were really solid, they wouldn't be this desperate to justify themselves. You think you're clearing things up. What you're actually doing is reinforcing the frame. They accuse, you scramble. Now the Machiavellian version, Rule 20. You hear the attack, you feel the sting, but you refuse to let your nervous system dictate your next move. You look calmly. You let your eyes rest on the person, not in challenge, not in fear, but in measured presence. 2 seconds of silence. Steady breathing. Those 2 seconds feel like an eternity when you're used to jumping into self-defense. But those 2 seconds are where your power lives. You prove to yourself first that you are not a puppet of every accusation, and then you answer only, "Noted. Next time, I'll bring a version that surprises you more." That's it. No long justification, no listing of obstacles, no blaming of others. You acknowledge, you commit to outperform, and you shut your mouth. Silence again. No explanation, no whining. In that silence, people feel something. They feel that you are not crushed. They feel that you are not frantic. They feel that you are not dragging everyone into a messy emotional scene. What happens psychologically? You show emotional control. The room registers your calmness as competence, not perfection, not never wrong, competence. You take the person out of the role of absolute judge. Your co-worker tried to sit on the throne of the one who decides whether you're adequate or not. Your response says, "You may criticize my work, but you don't get to define me." You do not hand over ammunition. When you over-explain, you reveal your process, your weak spots, your insecurities. You say things like, "I was overwhelmed, I didn't sleep, I did it last minute because I had too many things." Everything you say in that state can and will be used against you in conversations you'll never hear. Machiavelli would approve of an answer like that, because there, you're not begging for respect. You're communicating, "I heard you, I don't bow, and I'll come back stronger." You're saying, "My answer is not a plea, it's a promise." Now relationships, this is where it hurts more because emotions come in full force. In relationships, your need to be seen, to be understood, to be loved, is raw. So every accusation feels heavier. The person turns to you and says, "You only think about yourself. You never care about me. You're cold." Notice again, this is not curiosity, it's a verdict. They're not saying, "Sometimes I feel neglected and I'd like to talk about it." They're saying, "You are selfish, you are uncaring, you are cold." The fragile version goes into panic. "That's not true. I do everything for you. Remember that day? Remember when I helped you? I'm just tired." You panic because your attachment is threatened. You fear losing love, losing approval, so you start listing everything you've done, trying to prove your heart. You try to convince, you try to defend yourself, and the more you try, the guiltier you look. You start to sound like someone caught doing something wrong, trying to soften the sentence. Machiavelli wouldn't do that. He would recognize that the frame is poisoned from the start. A Stoic Machiavellian would breathe and answer, "Is that how you see it?" and stay silent. You don't accept the role of monster, but you also don't fall on your knees to beg for a new label. You let the other person sit with their own words. Maybe, Ed, calmly, "You're entitled to your interpretation. I'll watch what you do with it." That line is not cold just for the sake of being cold. It's clarity. You're saying, you can think what you want. What matters to me is not just what you say, but how you act after saying it. It's not rudeness. It's a psychological boundary. You are drawing a line between what they project and who you allow yourself to become in response. You must understand, whoever is always defending themselves in a relationship turns into an emotional doormat. If every complaint, every bad mood, every unjust accusation forces you into a long self-defense speech, you are training the other person to pressure you whenever they want control. You are rewarding emotional blackmail. You're not on trial in an emotional courtroom 24/7. You are allowed to disengage from unfair trials. You are allowed to say less. You are allowed to let silence answer what words would only complicate. Now, social life, friends, co-workers, group chats. Here, people play with your image. Jokes, comments, little knives hidden inside laughter. Someone says, "That guy over there is full of theories." But in practice, he doesn't do anything. Everyone looks at you. The needy version answers, "Come on man, that's not true. I did this, I did that. You guys know I work hard." You think that by listing your efforts, they'll stop, apologize, respect you. But in reality, most people already stop listening after your first defensive sentence. Everyone has already stopped listening. They only remember that you explained yourself. And that is the worst impression. Not lazy, not wrong, but desperate for validation. The Machiavellian smiles slightly, looks at the accuser and says, "Interesting that you think that." That's it. No rant, no counterattack, no attempt to win the room. Pause. And goes back to drinking, as if he had just heard the time of day. You treat the provocation like background noise, not like a bullet that pierced your identity. Maybe, after a few seconds, adds, "Anyone who really pays attention knows how I act. I don't need to announce it." You calmly declare that you trust your track record, not the opinions thrown in the air for laughs. You never chase public approval. You must let time and your actions speak. Time has a way of organizing things, of exposing who is consistent and who only lives in speeches. Machiavelli would say, reputation is built more by what you don't respond to than by what you argue. Every time you refuse to be dragged into cheap theater, you invest in a different kind of image. The image of someone who does not beg to be understood. The image of someone who does not collapse every time they are misread. The image of someone whose silence is not emptiness, but judgment. You can be innocent. You can know you're not what they say. You don't need to scream it from the rooftops every time someone tries to paint you otherwise. When you accept that, something changes. You stop playing the role of the accused, always responding, always justifying, and you start playing the role of the one who chooses when to speak, how to speak, and if it's even worth speaking at all. You stop kneeling to every opinion. You stop worshipping every misunderstanding. You start building a different kind of power, quiet, composed Machiavellian, where your worth is not up for constant negotiation. If this document helped you in any way, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave a like.